Alright, so when I first sat down to pick out the episodes that I was going to be doing for Give Me One of Everything, um, there was one series where I had absolutely no choice. You could argue the series that I haven't seen at all. I'll probably be starting with the first episode of those, but that is still a decision on my part. I could decide that the first episode is just not worth it and pick a later one to talk about instead. But in the case of Voyager, um, since Lore long ago did Voyager and is talking about redoing Voyager at some point in the future, the latter would negate anything that I could do, but based solely on the former, um, there is one episode that he flat out refused to do a proper rumination on because he said he just didn't have anything to talk about it. And so, based on the fact that I saw that episode and did not agree that there was nothing to talk about, that is inevitably the one that I'm going to be talking about, which is season 3, episode somewhere in the middle, I think number 15 or so, called Coda. And I remembered Coda very badly. When I started rewatching Voyager several years ago, I expected to hate that one, and seeing his seeing his sort of a rumination on it, where he said that there was nothing to talk about and just went off on a more general discussion of Janeway because the episode was all about her and he had nothing to talk about it more generally than that. I was pretty much with him on the whole subject because from all the way back in the day, watching Voyager, let me give you really quick my take on Voyager as a series. Back when it's of all of the 90s Star Treks, Voyager and debatably Enterprise, I'm not sure about that one, are the only ones that I actually saw all the way through. And Enterprise, of course, only got 4 seasons, so Voyager is the only show where I watched it from season 1 to season 7 all the way. And by memory, I had the idea that it was a show that had started with a really strong first season, then been completely terrible all the way through to the end, up until the last 15 or so episodes of the 7th season, where they were getting ready to end the show. And with the only exceptions to that pattern that I could remember being good being the very famous episode Scorpion, the season 3 to season 4 changeover, where they dealt with the Borg and introduced Seven of Nine in the second part. So almost everyone said Scorpion was a good episode. I agreed with that. And there was one other episode called Think Tank in the 5th season, which at the time I saw it, I thought it was good. That one actually hasn't held up, in my opinion. I found it less good on rewatch than I thought I would. But my memory was that with the exception of those 2/3 episodes in the middle, and the 15 at the start and the 15 at the end, counting a two-parter in each case, the first season was 15 episodes, I think, if you count Caretaker as one, and then at the end, it's actually more like 10 episodes now I think about it. It started with The Void was the first one that I remembered really liking. Oh, and Night. Night was one other really good episode that was the start of the 5th season. So there were those 3/4 episodes in the middle that I thought were good, and the start and end of the show. And I thought the entire middle part of the show, seasons 2 through 6, except for those 2 episodes, pretty much sucked and didn't have anything worth remembering about. On going back through Voyager, and by this time I have rewatched basically every episode at least once during the past 5 or so years, I have completely flipped on that opinion. Well, not completely. There's a number of really bad episodes in Season 2 and several fairly bad episodes in Season 3 that had left me with that impression. And so that kind of poisoned the well and made me think of all of Voyager as being bad all the way through. And Coda was one of the episodes that I thought was in that category, because it's very much a Mary Sue Janeway story, and from all the way back in the day, Janeway was my absolute least favorite character on Voyager because of how often that she was Mary Sued. It was a really, really obvious, obnoxious thing in a number of episodes. The worst example probably being Resolutions, but the second worst debatably being Coda. And so with that mentality in mind, and having seen the sort of rumination that Lore did, I went back and I watched Coda a couple of years ago, and I actually came to the conclusion that it was not actually that bad. It did have the Mary Sue Janeway thing going on, but not nearly as bad as it had been in other episodes, and the rest of it was pretty cogently presented. They did a pretty good job of the your life is flashing before your eyes because you've died and now you're in the afterlife, and there's this guy who wants to seduce you into hell or whatever. That seems that's basically the metaphor that they were going for, and I thought it was competently executed. So I am going to watch Coda now, and hopefully manage to get my thoughts recorded without hitting the storage cap on my phone, as I always do. It's a very worrisome prospect because I'm at 6 minutes now. So I'm going to hit pause and see, and before I start the episode, I'm going to look at my storage and see if I think I can actually do this.